we saw ugly faces of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism in the country, and then we decided we had to react to it. Not only simply producing a nice, theologically sound statement on ending violence and combat hatred, but also to show something tangible, to show that you are serious about it.
Nestled between the Black Sea to its west and breathtaking Caucasus Mountains to the north, the small Christian nation of Georgia has always been a melting pot of different cultures.
It's a sort of crossroad civilization. So we always have different from our neighbors, Persian, Arabic, or Ottoman, Byzantine, Greek, etc., etc. So this is a place where people usually manage to live peacefully. And somehow 75 years of Soviet activity, as it were, has changed the atmosphere. The city has become less tolerant.
For much of the 20th century, Georgia was part of the Soviet Union. As with elsewhere in the bloc, religion was brutally suppressed, but many Georgians continued to practice their faith in secret. Since independence in 1991, Georgia has experienced something of a religious revival. Today, more than 80% of its population identify as members of the Georgian Orthodox Church. I arrive at the Peace Project in early May during Holy Week, the most sacred time in the Orthodox calendar. It's Maundy Thursday, the festival which commemorates Jesus' Last Supper, and the cathedral is humming with worshippers from Georgia and all over the world. They've come for the ritual of foot washing, which recalls Jesus' act of humility as he washed the feet of his apostles. What's really unusual about the ritual taking place behind me is that there'll be people of all faiths participating, including members of the Jewish, Muslim and Buddhist community. And I'd like to find out why. What did they get out of it?
My name is Nestan Ananze. I'm ethnic Georgian Muslim. All religious house is God house, so there is just one way before God, and this one way we share.
What do you think of the fact that there's also a mosque and a synagogue in your church?
We are all the children of Adam and Eve, and every nationality and ethnicity is welcome.
I'm Eve Salomon, I'm Jewish.
And this is a bit different from your standard interfaith setup. I mean, you took part in the foot washing. What made you do that?
Well, I consider myself to be a spiritually inclined person. The communion of the heart is more important to me than religious observance. And this is very much a service which respects and incorporates aspects of different faith traditions.
The church here follows the Georgian Baptist tradition, a Protestant denomination that makes up a tiny minority in the country. Over time, the Georgian Baptists have reincorporated aspects of Orthodox Christianity into their services. They've got a history of standing up for religious minorities and women's rights, and even ordained the first female bishop in Georgia. Her name is Rushadan Botserutsev, and she talks me through the service.
When we started incorporating Georgian hymns, Georgian liturgy, which was very much rooted into our culture, I really felt home. So this liturgy, what we have now, has so many layers. For instance, in our Eucharist liturgy, we have the poetry from Jalaluddin Rumi, and the music we have from Muslim tradition, from Jewish tradition. So that openness helps us to see as much of our Creator as possible.
We break this bread for those who love God, for those who follow the path of Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, or any other faith traditions, so that one day we may be as
One thing that struck me about the liturgy in English today was during the Eucharist, the wish was expressed that 7
what is meant by that?
Well, that's a little scary phrase, right? First of all, we think about uniformity, which conveys some kind of danger if you don't appreciate the colors. Every religion, every tradition, I sometimes think if you mix too much colors, you can get colorless mud. But if you bring all these colors, appreciating the dynamics of these colors being together, then you have the rainbow colors. So when we pray that one day we'll be as one, we don't pray that we are just like each other. Being one means being equal, appreciating each other.
The Peace Project isn't the only place in the world to combine a church, mosque, and synagogue in the same complex. The Abrahamic Family House in Abu Dhabi and Berlin's House of One share a similar vision. But what sets the Georgian experiment apart is that an existing church has established other places of worship under its own roof. When you enter the building, you find yourself in the Peace Cathedral. To the left, a door leads to a Buddhist and Yazidi shrine, while straight ahead lies the main nave of the church. It's strikingly beautiful, adorned with a marble floor and a commanding sandstone altar, which gives the place an ancient feel. Bishop Malchas gives me a tour.
In the center, you can see the altar, which is beautifully carved with two angels elevating a sphere. Originally, it was designed that these two angels would be elevating the sphere with a cross. But eventually we realized that the cross is not a symbol of inclusion any longer. It is a symbol of exclusion. And therefore we left this circle empty.
In front of the altar, there are 8 wooden seats, and each of them has a carving of a religious symbol.
The Muslim and Jewish and Hindu and Buddhist, Yazidi symbols. Behind the altar, there are 2 archways. One archway on the left will take you to the synagogue, and another archway to the right will take you to the mosque. And also their names are influenced by the name of the cathedral. One is a Peace Mosque, and another is a Peace Synagogue.
We've got a large area here outside these windows, which looks to be under construction at the moment. What's going to go here?
This is going to be Tent of Abraham or Hall of Abraham. It's a fellowship hall where Muslims, Jews, Christians, and others, or anybody can come to have food and drinks and also fellowship.
Like a mingling area.
It's a mingling, you can call it mingling tent of Abraham.
This is the documentary from the BBC World Service. I'm Dan Hardoon, and I'm in Tbilisi, Georgia at the Peace Project. It's a radical experiment to bring a church, synagogue, mosque, and other places of worship under one roof. My tour continues at the Peace Mosque, a sanctuary for members of Georgia's Muslim community who make up around 10% of the country's population.
So we are now at the gate of entrance of the Masjid As-Salam. On the top we have got in the name of God, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
There's a lovely bright green carpet with some ornate decoration on it and some pillows. And it's quite an intimate space. How many people would come and worship here typically on a Friday?
We can easily hold 56 people.
For years now, Muslims in Georgia have found it almost impossible to get permission to build new mosques. In cities like Batumi, Georgia's second largest, worshippers have resorted to praying in a makeshift tent because local authorities have denied building permits for nearly a decade. Throughout its history, Georgia has faced waves of conquest from Muslim armies. Today, these deep tensions and lingering religious
Where a Muslim person was attacked for not wearing a cross.
context of this Islamophobia in Georgian society, what role does this peace mosque play?
The purpose of this place will be to show people who are maybe not hostile towards Muslims, but simply don't know much about them, that we can not only coexist and work together, but we can also pray together.
Given the difficulty of building new mosques in Georgia, I asked Bishop Malkhat if he's experienced any opposition to the project.
There has been opposition many times. Some people felt it was an attack on the majority culture. Some people thought it was encouragement of Islam in its radical forms. Some people thought that it was encouragement of religions in liberal form. But none of this has been true, and none of them have succeeded this time. But there are some cases, I should tell you. We were threatened that they would come by the state. We made provisions that if they come, I would chain myself to the walls, and we had this reinforced the iron rings behind them, and also used all my political connections in the country, and it stopped.
Just across the hallway, I continue my tour at the Peace Synagogue.
As you can tell, this is the same size room.
And you've got these balconies where in some synagogues women may sit, but in this synagogue the men and women presumably sit together on these chairs.
Well, this synagogue is meant for anybody who would like to worship here. If there is an Orthodox group that would like worship here, they can use balcony for their women, but it is not designated for women.
Compared to the other religions who worship here, Georgia's Jewish community is much smaller, around 5,000 people, mostly in Tbilisi. Its rich history goes back 26 centuries, with the first Jews arriving in the 6th century BCE after the destruction of the first temple. Misha Grishashvili, a co-founder of the Peace Synagogue, has been getting to know his Muslim neighbors.
The Muslims are on Shabbat, they're participating in the chanting and singing of our prayers. We're like praying with Imam for the Ramadan. He showed me what I need to read. I chanted in Arabic like a couple of sentences, halfway wrong of course, but everyone was happy, everyone was laughing.
And why is that kind of interfaith activity important?
So, we're divided on so many things, like the society on so many levels, and the religion thing is the only one which I think unites, because in 21st century, for a rational man to be religious is like on the edge of crazy. Like Christians, Muslims, Jews would be
Misha's wife Hetty is also a believer in the Peace Synagogue. She grew up with no connection to Judaism, and her mum was raised in the
It was very emotional. I had a little bit tear because I felt very proud. My grandfather was a seventh generation rabbi, and because I returned my family in my grandfather's way.
The Peace Synagogue is the only one in Georgia which caters to a more liberal or progressive style of Judaism. Men and women sit together during services, and women are allowed to read from the Torah scroll, which is forbidden in Orthodox Judaism. And these practices have sparked strong opposition from others in Georgia's Jewish community. Here's Misha again.
I felt that we disgraced the 26th century tradition of the Georgian Jews. They done every possible act to make our situation worse. At the moment when we were opening the synagogue, they were following us in the streets, taking
understand why some members of Georgia's Jewish community are so opposed to the existence of the Peace Synagogue. So I'm standing outside the Great Synagogue in the heart of Tbilisi's old town. It's an imposing brick building dating from the beginning of the 20th century. When I first approached some senior leaders of the Jewish community to talk about the Peace Synagogue, they refused, insisting it has no connection to Jewish life in Georgia and isn't actually a synagogue. Now, after some consideration, they've agreed to meet me at the Great Synagogue, Georgia's largest. Among them is Merab Chanchalashvili, chairman of the Jewish Union of Georgia. Speaking through an interpreter, I ask him why it's a problem for members of the Peace Synagogue to have their way of observing Judaism and his community to have its way.
But the point is that the Jewish way is Jewish way. There is no your way or my way. Everybody can praise the Lord in a way they please, but they should not violate anybody else's religion by doing that. So there is a rule that in a synagogue, women are supposed to be on a balcony upstairs and the men are sitting downstairs, and we are sitting in a separate ways. But they are sitting together, they are mixing up, and it seems to me that they are doing it because then it helps them to take up a position of a victim.
Rachamim Mordechashvili is the rabbi of Tbilisi's Great Synagogue.
So actually, it's a novelty for Georgia. We never had anything similar to that before, when people are trying to join everything together, to mix everything up, and by this achieve peace. We used to live in the times when even if one Jew would marry a non-Jew, it was considered a tragedy. Things change, and fortunately or unfortunately, there are many mixed families nowadays in Georgia, and we are trying to get them back into the fold of the faith. And also we feel that such practices might even alienate those Jews who might have turned back to the proper faith.
We talk about ways of getting back people who have left the fold, and I wonder whether particularly young people who are attracted to ideas of coexistence or different ways of practicing their religion, that you might be alienating those people.
So there are not too many young people around actually, and you wouldn't find even 10 or 5 young men who would say that they agree, and in my opinion, that it is better for the person to be left ignorant of the faith rather than doing it improperly.
Back at the Peace Project, I put some of their concerns to Bishop Malchas. It's fair to say that not everyone in Georgia has been completely accepting of your Peace Project. Some people fear that it's going to blur distinctive religious identities, or even lead to attempts at conversion.
Right. These are all false rumors. Nobody's converted anybody to anywhere. It has taken decades. First to build a reputation that we are not stealing anybody's shit. However, we are very keen to learn from everybody. Not steal, but to learn. There are people who are colorblind, right? Eventually we are going to become totally religion blind.
But to some people, religion blind could mean the loss of their own distinctive religious identity.
It is alright to be restricted in your vision when you're young and newly converted to religion, but it is also very important that eventually you mature. You realize that you are not the center of the world. Your religion is not the only true religion, and God is not your property.
This isn't the first time that Bishop Malchas has faced opposition to his religious ideas. Back in the early 2000s, his church was attacked by a violent mob who objected to his efforts to bring together different Christian denominations. In 2013, he resigned as Archbishop of the Baptist Church as a consequence of his support for LGBT rights. I wonder what drives him. Do you see yourself as a kind of modern-day martyr for the cause of peaceful coexistence?
Well, I'm not seeking martyrdom. And if I have failed so far. What I'm trying to do to achieve some change. And if I'm martyred, that's not a big deal. Something I believe, foolishly perhaps, what I stand for is much bigger than I am.
It's the weekend, and Bishop Malchas is preparing for one of Christianity's most sacred days. Easter in Georgia is a solemn affair. At the Peace Cathedral, anticipation builds with an all-night vigil on Saturday, culminating in a Sunday service. So I'm here at the Easter Day service at the Peace Cathedral. The room is full of incense and candles, and there are children dressed in white ringing bells, and a choir singing traditional Georgian hymns. But as it's the Peace Cathedral, there were a couple of twists. Early on in the service, some visitors from America broke out into gospel song. This must be the only church in Georgia where you'd hear a mix of American gospel music and traditional Georgian hymns. After the service, there's time to catch up with some more members of the congregation.
I'm Natia. One of the reasons that I chose to join this church is because Orthodox Christian Church is not very queer inclusive church. Also, as far as women's rights go, it's very limited in Orthodox Christian Church.
My name is James Crook. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, a member of Pullen Memorial Baptist Church. I had known of the Peace Cathedral for over 30 years. This has become an extremely important part of my spiritual life.
As Easter week draws to a close, my time at the Peace Project nears its end. Amid the hymns and chatter, I reflect on just how unusual an experiment this really is. In a world divided by conflict, this remarkable place offers a glimpse of how different religions can understand each other better. Of course, it's not for everyone. Whether the formula of the Peace Project can be replicated elsewhere remains to be seen. But its spirit of friendship and acceptance resonates deeply, a timely reminder of what the world sorely needs. You've been listening to the documentary from the BBC World Service with me, Dan Hardoon. It was an Overcoat Media production. I'll leave the last word to Bishop Malchaz.
The Peace Project creates this utopian opportunity where we can try to relate to each other in the space where humanity is celebrated. I want others being infected by this virus of acceptance, inclusion, love, empathy, and peace.
This is the BBC World Service, meeting the young girls wrestling for justice and Olympic glory.
Wrestling is more than a sport for girls. It can be the window to a better life. Respect within the family and community, guaranteed government jobs for sports champions, and an independent, exciting life.
Go ahead! India's Wrestling School for Girls. Thursday at 8:30 and 19 GMT. At bbcworldservice.com, health check.
I'll be looking at the psychology of toxic positivity with a live audience at the Cheltenham Science Festival in the UK. It's that pressure from other people to be constantly positive and to suppress any negative feelings, but is it always good for you?
Newsday is next. This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Hello and welcome to Newsday on the BBC World Service with Victoria Wampanda and James Cotnell. Coming up on the programme.
Well, we'll start in the US, where Donald Trump has accepted the Republican Party's presidential nomination.
Tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
We will get a reaction to his lengthy speech, his first one since the attempt on his life last weekend.
And we'll hear from President Zelensky speaking to the BBC. The Ukrainian president addressed the prospect of a Trump victory in November.
Everybody will be happy if one supporters of the world and supporters of Donald Trump can stop the war. The question is what the price and who will pay.
We'll bring you the latest in business and sport too.
All that and more, but first, the latest BBC World News.
Hello, I'm Govinda Gill with the BBC News. Donald Trump has described Saturday's assassination attempt in detail in a speech to the Republican National Convention, where he accepted his party's presidential nomination. He said he had felt safe that day because he had God on his side.
Bullets were flying over us, yet I felt serene. But now the Secret Service agents were putting themselves in peril. They were in very dangerous territory. Bullets were flying right over them. And then it all stopped. Our Secret Service sniper, from a much greater distance and with only one bullet used, took the assassin's life.
He said that if elected in November, he would close the US-Mexico border on day one and end international conflicts which started during the Biden administration.
Under our leadership, the United States will be respected again. No nation will question our power. No enemy will doubt our might. Our borders will be totally secure. Our economy will soar. We will return law and order to our streets, patriotism to our schools, and importantly, we will restore peace, stability, and harmony all throughout the world.
Meanwhile, pressure is mounting on the Democrat incumbent Joe Biden to abandon his re-election bid. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that if his allies in the West remain strong, what he called the hot phase of the war against Russia could be over by the end of the year. Mr. Zelensky said Ukraine needed long-range missiles to help change the course of the war in its favour. He said that if Donald Trump won the US election later this year, he would hope to win the backing of the new Vice President, J.D. Vance, who has been critical of support for Ukraine.
Maybe he really doesn't understand what goes on in Ukraine. So for us, we have to work with the United States. And if new team will come, we have to work with them. We need their support. I mean, we don't afraid of hard work.
Amnesty International says Peru's president may be responsible for serious human rights abuses over dozens of deaths during protests at the start of her presidency. Dina Boluarte has repeatedly denied ordering the police and military to stifle the demonstrations sparked by the ousting of her predecessor, Pedro Castillo, in late 2022. Gustavo Adrianzen is Peru's prime minister.
We categorically reject each one of the sections of this report. We deny it, especially when they unduly attribute to the President of the Republic a responsibility for the unfortunate events that occurred during the protests in December 2022 and January 2023.
BBC News. The Israeli military says it's investigating an apparent drone attack that hit central Tel Aviv early on Friday. The Israeli emergency services said the explosion killed one person and injured several others. Barbara Plett-Usher reports from Jerusalem.
The Israeli military said an initial inquiry indicated the explosion was caused by the falling of an aerial target, which did not trigger air raid sirens, and it announced an increase in air patrols. Yemen's Houthi militants suggested they were responsible for the apparent attack. They said on social media they would reveal details about a military operation that targeted Tel Aviv. The incident also took place after Israel confirmed it had killed another senior commander of the Hezbollah militia in southern Lebanon. Both movements are backed by Iran and say they are acting in solidarity with the Palestinians over Israel's war with Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
Costa Rica says it's considering signing an agreement with the United States to address mass migration in the region. Record numbers of people have been crossing the Darien Gap, a dangerous jungle area that links South and Central America, with the hope of reaching the Mexico-US border. Local residents have attacked police in the city of Leeds in northern England, setting fire to vehicles and overturning a police car. Local people said the disorder in an inner-city neighbourhood began when social workers tried to take at-risk children into care, and some people in the community responded by throwing stones. When police arrived at the scene, they were attacked by a crowd of residents. The conservative US political commentator Lee Dawes has died at the age of 78.
at the moment on stage, as I'm looking at the various things in the studio, it seems his family, including his wife and Trump, and all his children, and at the moment balloons and American flags are from the roof into the crowd, and everybody's cheering, everybody is clapping. In his long career as a property developer, former President Trump, now presidential candidate, has made many speeches, but few can have been as anticipated and scrutinized as this one. Mr. Trump was speaking less than a week after the failed attempt on his life, and the room was filled with his supporters and many of the Republican delegates in Milwaukee. Before Donald Trump took to the stage, Kid Rock tweaked his rock hit American Badass for the occasion. From where the assassin's bullet grazed him last Saturday, spoke about the attempt on his life.
As you already know, the assassin's bullet came within a quarter of an inch of taking my life. So many people have asked me what happened, and therefore I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell. Behind me and to the right was a large screen that was displaying a chart. I started to, like this, turn to my right when I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard. I said to myself, wow, what was that? And then one movement proceeded to drop. Bullets were continuing to fly. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet in a certain way I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that.
Mr. Trump also said that he believed that under President Joe Biden, America had been getting the short end of the stick in deals with a range of countries.
And think of it, oftentimes these other countries are considered so-called allies. They've taken advantage of us for years. We lose jobs, we lose revenue, and they gain everything and wipe out our businesses, wipe out our people. I stopped it for 4 years. I stopped it. We will not let countries come in, take our jobs, and plunder our nation. They come in, they plunder our nation. The way they will sell their product in America is to build it in America. Very simple. Build it in America and only in America.
Donald Trump there, so plenty on his own personal experiences of the last week or so, plenty on his vision for America. BBC's Mike Wenham was in the room at the RNC, Republican National Convention, as the speech was made, and joins us now. A lengthy speech. What stood out for you, Mike?
Yeah, well, he was, you hear those clips that he was giving a very detailed description of what happened on Saturday. It was very somber, and, the mood was pretty flat, I suppose, compared to most Trump rallies. At certain points, he did connect with the crowd, but only when he went off script. We were promised a much shorter speech, actually. He ad-libbed quite a bit and tried to sort of connect with the crowd. The main issues, of course, are the issues that he's been hammering away at throughout his campaign. Inflation in the economy, immigration, and foreign entanglements. And he claims that he was a much better president than Joe Biden on any of those issues. He really could not resist a dig, several digs at Democrats. He spoke about Joe Biden and called him one of the worst presidents in history. The theme of this Republican convention has been one of unity, but Donald Trump will never really stick to his script.
Lots of the themes, I suspect, would have been familiar to people who've followed his career over the last 8-10 years, closing the border with Mexico, irritation perhaps would be the word, at what he sees as China's influence globally and on America's economy. As you say, digs on the Democrats. He was reading from his own script in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the immigration team was really good. He promised the biggest program in the U.S. history. When the Eisenhower instituted in the 1950s, where 1 million Mexican immigrants were sent to the United States, bigger than that. He accused immigrants of bringing crime of countries throughout Latin America and the rest of the world, of sending Germans mentally ill here, and without much basis in fact, he said that was costing hundreds of thousands of lives. And it was sort of one of the more sort of lengthy sections of the speech after being big details about that assassination.
And I'm interested to know your thoughts on the reaction within the room. I'm just looking at a tweet from Edward Luce, who's the associate editor of the Financial Times newspaper. And he wrote, people starting to leave, loud chattering on the fringes of the arena. Trump is boring the audience, was his conclusion.
Yeah, it is after midnight on the East Coast, just after 11 p.m. Here in Central Time Zone in Wisconsin. At points, the crowd did seem to kind of drift off. I've been to Trump rallies in the past, and it's usually they are engaged for as long as it takes. This was a little bit of a more subdued, a little bit more of a struggle for Trump to connect with this crowd tonight. Clearly, people in the room will still be very, very enthusiastic about their candidate, but I do just wonder what people watching at home at this late hour Tuesday.
Well, Wendy, BBC correspondent in Milwaukee, thank you very much indeed.
Well, we are staying with this latest development from Donald Trump in his speech at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Now, on stage, Mr. Trump talked about many issues, as we've been hearing from some of the clips we played, as well as from our correspondent there, Mike, who was speaking to James just moments ago. As had been expected, the former president spoke on unity in the country.
4 months from now, we will have an incredible victory, and we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country. Together we will launch a new era of safety, prosperity, and freedom for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. The discord and division in our society must be healed. We must heal it quickly. As Americans, we are bound together by a single faith and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America.
Joining us now from Milwaukee is Pastor Mark Burns. He is a member of former President Trump's Evangelical Advisory Board and was a Trump-endorsed candidate for the U.S. Congress in South Carolina. He was in the room listening to the former president's speech. Pastor Burns, welcome back to the program and a very good evening to you. What did you make of Mr. Trump's speech tonight?
I've heard the president speak so many times, and this is one of his best speeches ever. The message that we've sent to the world, and especially America, is that help is on the way. With the crushing inflation under Joe Biden, horrible economics under Bidenomics, President Trump is leading the charge to make America strong and safe. By closing the borders and getting our economy back on track.
How did his speech land with the people in the room, the convention? Because you were there, you were watching people, you were listening to them. What did they make of it?
Well, this is Trump ground zero. All of the Trump Republicans and established Republicans have unified in these last several days here in Milwaukee to get behind our leader, our champion, the one that God has anointed for such a time as this. And the people are excited. They are ready to get started. The election is going to come very quickly. There's a lot that has to be done. We expect for Joe Biden to come out of the race. I wish he would stay in the race, but unfortunately, something that he's expected to drop out by this weekend, but he will not endorse his Vice President Harris. So that just leaves more ammunition for President Trump and the Republican Party to not only take the White House but take the House.
This is a man who's been called a divisive figure in American politics and within the Republican Party itself. Do you think tonight he succeeded in uniting the party and the base and the American people who will be going to the polls in November?
I think the president united us back, when he, months and months ago, when they found him guilty, but yet he wrote over $100 million in 48 hours. And they thrown everything at him but didn't see. Now they've tried to take his life. He has already, as I said to him, he was touched by the hand of God. God saved him. The book of Isaiah, chapter 54, verse 17. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, Mr. President. And that's what the message has been said. He unified us by being who he is and being consistent. He is a billionaire. He does not need this. Yet he sacrificed his personal life for the American people. We cannot have 4 more years with Joe Biden or whoever the Democrats put up, but we cannot have 4 more years of Democrat policy and the American people know that. And they unify behind this is a cycle that is not going to.
He said that they tried to take his life, but if I put it to you, Pastor Vance, it's been reported that the shooter who was killed then by the Secret Service was a registered Republican. So who are they who tried to take Mr. Trump's life?
Well, they is this registered Republican who also donated to Democrats.
$15.
That's the whole message. It doesn't matter. If you donate, that means that's what you believe. And that's what the latest support was to the Democratic Party, Joe Biden and his policies. The reality of it is this person was an individual who did just like they did to Dr. King, just like they did to Bobby Kennedy, just like they did to JFK. They who are the opposition to the Make America Great Again movement or the American First movement. And that's who he represents. And the world is behind Donald Trump. America is behind Donald Trump because it is clear that God is protecting President Trump for such a time as this to lead this nation back to him.
Pastor Mark Vance, thank you so much for your time, and we will wait to see what happens at those polls in November. It will be November 5th when Americans elect their president. We are hoping to get so many of your comments. Do send them our way. As always, we do appreciate it. You are listening to the BBC World Service and Business Newsday.
And that's where we leave the BBC World Service to whisk you off into the day ahead here on BBC Radio 4. Good morning, this is Jane Steele. As more people across the world take up cricket, Armin today hears about the impact the demand for bats is having on willow production. You can hear that report at 6:15 after news briefing and prayer for the day. Stand by for the shipping person, but first, look who's back on Radio 4.
All aboard for the new series of Alexi Sales, Strangers on a Train. Where are you going today?
Steadness for an 80s bangers weekend.
Strangers on a Train is all about really just getting on the train and talking to people.
These days know that, do you? I'm completely ignorant of absolutely everything. That's why they put me on the radio.
I mean, it's a chat show. I don't know who I'm going to meet, and I'm constantly interrupted by announcements.
You're really nice.
The new series of Alexi Sales, Strangers on a Train, on Radio 4, BBC Sound. Starts tomorrow morning at 10:30.
Now here's Helen Willis.
Jane, thank you. Good morning. It's time for the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office on behalf of the Maritime and Coastguard Agency at 05:05 on Friday the 19th of July 2024. There are warnings of gales in Shannon, Rockall, Malin and Hebrides. The general synopsis at midnight: low 120 miles west of Rockall 995, expected Bailey 999 by midnight tonight, low 400 miles west of Seoul.
Made a record-breaking number of lies during his campaigning trail. I think there's actually a website where you can see the provably false statements he's made about the US economy and about
Well, I thought when he was talking, I thought we needed to fact check at least two things. He said that the ear
is apparently the organ of the body that has the most blood, which is why he had blood. And I go, what, more than the aortic artery, or I doubt it. And then 107% of jobs go to illegals.
Well, actually, that's complete nonsense.
He said he's pushing blacks out of the workplace to be replaced by illegal immigrants. 107% of jobs go to them.
Well, how can you possibly do that? Because you can't possibly give us 107% of anything. So, no, I mean, I think that the other thing is that the highest search for term on Google is Plan 2024. I don't know if you've heard of this. This is a Republican plan, which is basically closing the Department of Education, closing the FBI, removing Medicare and Social Security. Now, obviously, a lot of his supporters are dependent on Medicare and Social Security.
Okay.
So, I think that...
Not convinced, I think, is the overall impression, no?
No, not at all.
All right, fair enough. All right, Jeremy, thank you. I've got a couple of other callers who want to talk about that. Delroy's in Brixton. Hello, Delroy.
Ian, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
Been keeping up.